Hey, good afternoon to you. It is now 5:07, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Here in the United States, the American left has made no secret of the fact that they do not favor free speech at all. Speech that challenges their power is speech that needs to be suppressed and criminalized. How many times do we need to see that? But the American left is not alone. The global left is cracking down on speech everywhere. In fact, this past week, French authorities arrested the CEO of a social media platform called Telegram. His name is Pavel Durov. They held him for days in custody without even charging him. They later dropped charges on him, accusing him of allowing all sorts of unlawful activity on the platform, saying that his moderation is much too lax and therefore he needs to be punished. He needs to be punished for other people's speech. Did the American government have a hand in any of this? And what do we make of this fascist behavior? Michael Ding joins us now. He's an attorney at America First Legal, and he joins us on the phone. Hello, Michael. Good to have you with us, sir.
Hi, Vince. Thanks for having me.
If you could, just give me a general sense of what, especially Europe's attitudes are towards speech right now, European governments.
Yeah, I think we've seen, just in the past several weeks, many good examples of Europe's general attitude towards freedom of speech and how little they care about the freedom of speech compared to us Americans, right? So before Elon Musk had his conversation with Donald Trump on X, he received that letter from the European Commission bureaucrat threatening him and X over Europe's Digital Services Act. And then similarly, just within the past week or so, I think a lot of folks have seen this one too. You had in Great Britain, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, talking about how he is willing to throw the full force of the law at people, including maybe potentially Americans who he would seek extradition of for violation of Britain's speech laws. So just from those two notable examples from the past couple of weeks, I think we can all get a sense of how they feel about our First Amendment rights as Americans.
And what is the pretext for something like this? Why do they claim that they'd be able to force the extradition of an American citizen for saying something they disagree with? What's the rationale for that?
Well, unlike Americans, Europeans in general have fewer constitutional rights with their home governments. And now that speech has mostly moved online, and what you post online as an American, it reaches audiences in other countries. And these other countries, whether it's within the EU or Great Britain, they have very harsh laws, not just about hate speech, but also for disinformation. And as we've seen, disinformation seems to be whatever is opposed to the prevailing narrative that is acceptable to those regimes.
Yeah, and we've seen I remember not that long ago, the UK was arresting people who were silently praying outside of abortion mills in the UK. They just in there and just standing on the corner, and cops would approach them and say, "What are you doing? What are you thinking?" They would ask. "What do you?" And you see stuff like that, and you're like, "Where have we gone?" I mean, obviously they're not protected by the Constitution, but the UK, I mean, they talk about the importance of their founding documents and the Magna Carta, and just the idea that there are overriding principles that are supposed to be present in all of Western civilization. They're deteriorating very quickly, Michael.
Yeah, and that's certainly been one of the most concerning things about this current Biden-Harris administration. And I know you opened this conversation up in the context of an arrest of Telegram's founder, but just overall, in terms of where this administration has been, whether you're weighing the rights that are recognized in America, such as free speech, versus the interests of the European allies on the other side of the Atlantic. I mean, just a couple of years ago, you had President's National Economic Council advisor, Brian Deese, talking about how high oil prices for Americans is of second importance to fighting for, quote unquote, the liberal world order. So that's certainly big picture what drives a lot of our concerns about what is our current government leadership doing with respect to these other interests that run in conflict with American principles.
So let's talk more specifically then about the issue that I brought up at the outset, which is Pavel Durov is the CEO of Telegram. He was arrested in France, and as I mentioned, he was held for days without being charged at all. Now they've dropped a number of charges on him, and the question that I want to go over with you is whether or not the Biden-Harris administration played a role in trying to criminalize that platform and go after that CEO. What can you tell us?
Well, that's exactly what we here at America First Legal, that's exactly what we're trying to find out, right? We think that involvement, whether it's complicit, acquiescence or, a motivating factor, whatever it is, we need to know what our State Department knew, who knew what, when, and whether they signed off on this action or whether they even encouraged it. One thing that former U.S. State Department official Mike Benz has been highlighting since this event is that these major arrests with huge geopolitical consequences, they certainly don't happen without, if not the blessing, at least the notification of the U.S. State Department.
Right.
This isn't something that the French government would just do and blindside the U.S. government because, that could be cause for embarrassment or other things that need to be deconflicted. And so presuming that notification happened, I think the American people need to know what position this administration took.
And Michael Ding, with an arrest like this of a high-profile CEO of a big social media company, international social media company, and the allegation that he's responsible for the words that other people have used on his platform, what kind of message does that send to the other big social media firms all around the globe?
Yeah, it's certainly a very chilling effect, to say the least, right? I mean, you can tell whether it's what Brazil is doing to Elon Musk over X and the free speech that is happening on that platform, or Mark Zuckerberg's recent letter on behalf of Meta to the United States Congress saying that he very much is going to stay out of this election cycle with Facebook content moderation, supposedly. People understand that if your platform allows unpopular opinions to be taking place that could affect a political election or an outcome that this regime is opposed to, you could be at risk. In Pavel's interview with Tucker Carlson, he mentioned that whenever he comes to the United States, the FBI will pay him a visit. So there's certainly some sort of intimidation going on. And the French case is so far what it looks like the most severe example so far.
Yeah. All right. Well, so America First Legal's role in all of this, you are now demanding answers from the United States Department of State in the form of Freedom of Information Act requests. And I assume if they don't respond promptly, you will be suing in pursuit of these documents.
Yeah, let's see whether they intend to respond. Well, yeah. I can say we certainly have at least a few open lawsuits already, whether it's with the Department of State, Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity Agency, and even with the CDC, where we have already uncovered records and documents showing how this administration has engaged in censorship, whether abroad or here at home domestically. Yes. So this would just be another one in that long fight we've been having here.
Okay. Well, God bless you for doing it. Michael Ding with America First Legal. Thank you, sir, for your time today. Really appreciate that.
Thank you, Vince.
That's the Michael Ding, America First Legal, great organization. Now, this conversation about domestic censorship and the role that Biden and Harris have played in it. Mark Zuckerberg's letter, quite infamously in the last week, really helped emphasize what they've been up to. That includes in the form of the Biden campaign leading the charge to suffocate the Hunter Biden laptop story in the lead up to the 2020 election. All these social media companies, to include Facebook, dutifully saying, oh, yeah, we'll banish all of this. And the Biden campaign wrangled up 51 current and former intelligence officials to help spread the notion that that was merely Russian disinformation. Of course, the FBI knew better. They had Hunter Biden's laptop. And then during the Biden presidency, conversations around COVID and liberty and the efficacy of all of these various government mandates, they were all shut down on these big social media platforms at the behest of the Biden administration. The White House browbeating the social media companies, implicitly threatening them in order to get them to censor you and the various people who might want to speak to you on those subjects, including about the origins of COVID. And then we have Kamala Harris herself, specifically. I want to highlight. You know, Kamala Harris was a part of an effort to try and get President Trump banned from Twitter, what was once known as Twitter. Eventually, Twitter would accede to her demands and actually banish him from the platform. He's since been restored by Elon Musk, now under the name X. But here's Kamala Harris back in 2019. There's a fellow on X by the name of Eric Abinante, who I want to credit with surfacing this. Back in 2019, Kamala Harris was on CNN, and even Jake Tapper said, this is crazy. You want to get the sitting president of the United States banned from social media? Here's what she said at the time.
I guess the question about you I know you wrote to Twitter and the CEO, Jack Dorsey, and asked him to take away the president's Twitter handle, his account. How is that not a violation of free speech? I mean, the president has the same rights that you have, that I have, and how would that not just be a slippery slope where they have to ban, half of the people on Twitter?
I've heard that argument, but here's the thing, Jake. First of all, a corporation, which is what Twitter is, it does not have it has obligations, and in this case, Twitter has terms of use policy, and their terms of use dictate who.
She's a United States senator at that time, hectoring a social media company, using the power of her office to urge them to banish American citizens from the platform. Do you think she respects the Constitution? You think she has, there's any part of her that respects the Constitution? And she's supposed to be a lawyer, remember this. She went to law school. She became a prosecutor. Kamala Harris, for the people. What people is she for? What people? Not the American people, not the people who care about the First Amendment.
And their terms of use dictate who receives the privilege of speaking on that platform and who does not. And Donald Trump has clearly violated the terms of use, and there should be a consequence for that. Not to mention the fact that he has used his platform, being the President of the United States, in a way that has been about inciting fear and potentially inciting harm against a witness to what might be a crime against our country and our democracy. And
I'm not even sure what stupid scandal they were talking about that at the time. I was going to try and sort it out, but who cares? And of course, Trump wasn't inciting anybody. Without even looking at it, I know what she just doesn't like, that he disagreed with whatever garbage the left was sowing at the time, and so she wants to criminalize that too. So if Trump disagrees with me, he should be banished from social media.
And for that reason, I do believe that that it's clear that he has violated the terms of use, and I'm asking that Twitter does what it has done in previous occasions, which is to revoke someone's privilege because they've not lived up to the advantages of the privilege.
Oh, you see that? Speech is not a right, it's a privilege, and you needed to have it taken away because you disagree with me. Apparently, Jake Tapper wasn't alone at the time. Even Chris Hayes over on NBC was like, maybe this could be a little bit problematic.
You've had an exchange with Senator Warren about Twitter and about Trump violating the terms of service. Why does that matter? Like, why, of all the things, why that?
Ask the whistleblower.
Ask members of the United States Congress. Ask the people who are prepared to testify about this president's lawlessness and obstruction of justice. Ask the people and the families in El Paso when that shooter admitted in his manifesto that he was influenced by Donald Trump's tweets.
Gosh.
Donald Trump has 65 million followers on Twitter. And we have to take seriously the weaponization of this platform by the president and the need, therefore, of a private corporation to be held accountable to say he has abused the terms, and it could result literally in a threat to safety of human beings who are participating with the process of justice.
There is not a part of you civically, constitutionally, that is concerned about the precedent of a private company taking the platform away from the President of the United States or some other elected official?
Free speech does not condone or protect threats to the safety of other human beings.
What threats?
And so that is what we are talking about. Like, let's be really clear about what we're talking about, because this can go into some abstract law school debate.
Yeah, like the First Amendment. We wouldn't want to, dive into an abstract law school thing like the First Amendment to the Constitution. Who is it? The Democrat governor of New Jersey? He said the Bill of Rights is above his pay grade. Phil Murphy. It's above my pay grade. By the way, that El Paso shooter that she just so casually threw out, that's Trump's fault. That guy was an eco-fascist by his own admission in his own stupid, manifesto. Meaning he was like a psycho climate killer. All right, coming up here on the program, President Trump making remarks today in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, campaigning in a very important state for this election. He just talked about, a short while ago, his visit to Arlington National Cemetery this week on Monday, which has been the subject of so much invented left-wing drama. We'll play some of the audio from his remarks. Very important day this week. A very solemn event. President Trump now commenting on it. And we'll take your phone calls, 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Stay with us. Okay, good afternoon to you. 5:35 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us on the air today at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. President Trump, speaking right now in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, just moments ago, talked about his visit to Arlington National Cemetery on Monday. Remember, the left tried to stop this. When I mean the left, I say the Biden administration specifically. Biden-Harris tried to stop President Trump's visit to Arlington. When they found out that the Gold Star families had invited him, they began throwing all sorts of roadblocks in the way, and it took Speaker of the House Mike Johnson intervening to make it possible for a former president to pay his respects at Arlington National Cemetery. He goes Monday, and the hijinks continue as you get officials from the administration jumping out in front of the cameras that are there to capture all of this. The Gold Star families had actually both asked for and signed off on those cameras, including with President Trump being there with them at Arlington. And then after those goons jump out in front of the cameras, NPR runs an article later in the week claiming that the Trump people were being rude and were pushing past these people working for the Biden administration. And when, of course, it was the Biden people who were jumping out in front of the cameras that the Gold Star families had requested be there. So it's just one out of control story after another, all orchestrated by the Biden-Harris administration to upend that visit. President Trump spoke about how the families had extended this invite and what brought him to Arlington Monday. Listen to this.
In Afghanistan, so what happens is you take the wonderful families and they come in, and we're in Washington. They said, would it be possible, sir, would it be at all possible for you to come because we're celebrating our child's life? The child was buried because of Joe Biden and Comrade Harris. Would it be at all possible, sir, for you to be there? And I said, it's going to be real tough. I was really far away. And sometimes it's tough. But I said, you know what, we have to do it. And I got my team and I said, let's go. We're going to Arlington Cemetery. Okay. I said, we're going to Arlington. Because again, I got to know these people. Because honestly, they would send me death certificates of their child. They said, sir, would you sign it? Please sign it. We refuse to accept his name on this death certificate. They said he killed our child.
Oh my gosh.
And honestly, the incompetence killed their children. The incompetence, gross. And by the way, they lost almost 500 people that day, including the other side. They left Americans behind. They're still there. Nobody knows even what happened to them. Think of this. They left $85 billion worth of brand new military equipment that I bought because I rebuilt the entire military. $85 billion worth of equipment behind. They left everything and they moved the military first. Instead of last, you say, you stupid people, you take the military out last. For 18 months, and a lot of you know this, for 18 months, not one American, after I spoke to Abdul, the leader of the Taliban, not one person was shot. We didn't lose one person for 18 months. In fact, Joe Biden got up on television one day, and he said, for 18 months, not one person was shot during the Trump administration. Then the people started screaming at him, you stupid, don't say that. You know, you are so stupid, they tell him. But I appreciated that he said that. But it's true. For 18 months, nobody was lost, and nobody would have been lost, and we were getting out. I had it down to 5,000 people. But we were going to keep Bagram, which is the big air base, one of the biggest in the world, had the biggest runways, most powerful runways, 8 foot deep. You could land anything on those runways. Not because of Afghanistan. We're keeping Bagram for a different reason. 1 hour away from where China makes its nuclear weapons, right? So I got a call from the people. Sir, we're going to be going to Arlington to honor our children who were killed. And they are devastated, the people. I had them over at Bedminster, and they didn't think I'd see them. And they said, do you think we'll see him? And they said, well, we don't know. He'll try and make it. I ended up spending 4 hours late at night listening to music with all of the relatives of the people that were killed, so needlessly killed. And I got to know them. I got to know them, and we were looking at the sky, beautiful place. So we're looking at the sky, and we're listening to Elvis, and we're listening to Elton John. We're listening to everybody. And I said, look, your son is looking down at you. And the whole thing was beautiful. And you get to know them. They didn't think I'd see them, but at most I would spend 15 minutes. And I ended up spending many hours. So I got to know them. So they called up and they said, do you think you could be there, sir? I said, I'll try if I can. And we really had to turn things around. Anyway, I got there. And we had a ceremony. We had the changing of the guard. No, we had a beautiful ceremony. And then they said, sir, could you come to the graves? Could you come to the graves? After the ceremony, they said, could you come to the graves? Would that be possible? I said, I will. But I got like this big stadium, something was waiting. I said, but I'm going to, because those people are the love of our lives. They are the love of our lives.
So listen to what he's saying. What he's saying here is that, first of all, I hadn't heard the story about Bedminster. That's so wonderful. That just the time he got to spend with the families, all those hours. And they've expressed over and over how appreciative they are of him. But the story he's telling is that each step of the way, including at Arlington, the families were like, please come with us. Please do this next thing. Please do this next thing. And rather than it be a political event, Trump is saying, I had events on my schedule that were waiting for me, that he had political events to get to, but instead opted to spend his time with the families. Contrast that with the way the left is acting this week, as if, President Trump exploited these people, that he forced himself on them, that he turned their grief into his political rally. It was the exact opposite.
And in all fairness, I can say there's the mother's, father's, sisters, the brother, but the various people that we're talking about, depending on who it is, but the various people, they say it to me, I'll say it to you. I mean, I don't think they can ever be the same. I said, is it better now? Because it's 3 years, is it better? No, it's not better. You know, they have an expression, time heals all wounds. But I said, is that expression true? No, sir. Maybe it's worse now, sir. It's devastating. These people are just so devastated. So anyway, we're there, and they said a prayer, different graves, one here, one there. Then they said to me, I'm not surprised, I never even thought about it. Sir, would it be possible for you to have a picture with us by the tombstone of my son? You know, the beautiful white tombstones, marble, beautiful, beautiful things, and carved, engraved with the names on them. I said, absolutely. I wasn't doing it I don't need publicity. I get a lot of publicity. I would like to get a lot less publicity. I would pay to get, I'm the only guy who would hire a public relations agent to get less publicity. Most hire to get publicity. So I was taking pictures at the grave, one with the sister, and then the mother, and then the father come in, and then another group at a different grave. And it was so beautiful, and we left, and everything was nice. And then later on that day, I heard that we were using the graves of those soldiers for public relations purposes, you know? And that was all put out by the White House. Joe Biden killed those young people because he was incompetent. And then they tell me that I used their graves for public relations services, and I didn't. And I'll tell you what, it was a disgrace. And she was involved. Remember, she said she was the last person in the room, right, when they made the decision.
Kamala Harris.
And pulling out was okay, but not pulling out like a bunch of incompetent fools. And that's what they did. We had them in such a great position. But when I took those pictures, it was so beautiful. They were crying. Everybody was crying. They were talking about 3 years ago, because of a grossly incompetent group of generals, and we have great generals. Don't forget, we defeated ISIS entirely with great generals, real generals, not these television morons that you see all the time. But when I saw that, I said, I think I have to talk about it. Now, my people said, don't do it, sir. Don't do it. But if I don't tell you the story, you're going to read. It was front page of the Washington Post, which has lost approximately 57% of their readers over the last 3 years. It was a story in the New York Times, which is losing reader after reader. I'm happy about that. I have to be happy because they truly are the enemy of the people. They are the enemy of the people. They tell false stories about me. That's all they do is they write false stories. They're incapable. I could do the greatest thing. I got to tell you, I ran for office, and they were covering it viciously, but it was front page every day, and then I won. I beat everybody, and I had a story on page 17. So I won, David, and my story was on page 17, but I was always at page 1 when I made a little speech or something. It's that's why they call it the fake news media. It's desperately trying to hide Kamala's failures and extremism from the public. They don't want the people to know how unfit she is to serve. She's unfit to serve. Everything she touches, she ruins. Just to finish this, I love those people. I'm so happy they took pictures of me and them and the tombstone and their lovely son or daughter. There was a daughter, too. And an incredible daughter, frankly. I've almost gotten to know them, even though I never met them, but I know everything about them. The mother would walk up and say, sir, may I tell you about my boy? You know, he was a football player, and he could throw the ball so far. He played quarterback, sir. And one day, and I realized that she's telling me a story and crying about her son who's now in a grave because of Biden and Kamala. And I listened to that whole story, how the ball was caught, how the ball was thrown, how the team did, the season the team had, and I let her talk. And then these people accused me of doing this for public relations reasons. And the fact that we even The fact that we even got there. The fact that we even got there. So I just want to, and they were so good. They said, how dare they do that? We asked him. They did ask me. And, you know, they actually came to my defense. It's nice because sometimes that doesn't happen too. But they really did. They said, we asked him to be here.
The family's released a statement.
And we want him to be there always. And I just think that's great. And we love you all. Thank you.
All right, so a nice accounting and some more details, actually, than we even knew about how all of this came to pass. But the left trying to scandalize a visit by a former president of the United States to Arlington National Cemetery to pay his respects this week. There's President Trump's perspective on all of it. We do have some phone calls coming in. I want to take those. I've got Kip calling in from Fredericksburg now. He's on line 2. Kip wants to weigh in on Kamala's attitudes towards free speech. She prefers censorship. Hello, Kip.
Oh, hi, Vince. It's a pleasure to talk with you.
I think I may have said he. Excuse me, she. Hello, Kip. Good to have you on the air.
That's all right. It wouldn't be the first time it's happened.
Go ahead.
Listen, people don't seem to understand that the reason Kamala thinks the way she does is that from elementary school through high school, she was educated in a foreign country. She was taken to Canada. Mm-hmm. And Canada does not teach their children American history. So she has no consideration of our founding fathers, nor how this country managed to write a constitution and why they wrote it the way they did. This stuff is beyond her. Plus the fact that this province that she was taken to, their main language is not even English; it's French.
And what is France's relationship these days to free speech? Not so good, it turns out,
that's
Kip.
True.
And Canada, for that matter, has produced people like Fidel Castro's son, Justin Trudeau, who are not very big on civil liberties and free speech. In fact, they're going out of their way to crush people who speak up for the opposition view, like the truckers who made themselves known in Canada. What happened to them just by using their speech? They had their bank accounts crushed. They had their lives upended, all because of the Canadian left. So you're right in pointing out that Kamala Harris spent a very meaningful part of her upbringing in Canada. And for her to adopt these ridiculous accents as she speaks to various audiences, that it's like, is that how they, J.D. Vance brought this up. It's like her using a fake Southern accent. He said, what the hell is that about? She grew up in Canada. They don't even talk like that in Vancouver or Quebec or wherever she came from.
And two very small points, others to make. Number one, if you are bilingual, when you try to translate something into another language and repeat it, your mind does not put it together the same way you would in English. As a bilinguist myself, I understand this. That's why her language is so screwed up half the time,
Interesting.
And,
Does Kamala speak? I didn't know. Does Kamala speak French? Do we know that?
Well, I'm sure she had to speak something when she went to school there.
Yes. What was it? Yeah. When she went overseas, remember she put on that fake French accent,
Exactly.
or what sounded like one when she was traveling overseas. And she was referring to the plan. She kept saying the plan when she was, and people were like, that sounds vaguely like a lame French accent. So maybe she speaks a little bit of French or something from her time in Canada.
And I will give you dollars to donuts that woman has never sat down and read our Constitution from beginning to end.
I would not in any way be shocked by that. And she has a law degree. Thank you, Kip. I really appreciate the phone call. Good to hear from you. That was an excellent call. It is now, for as long as we have a left, they're always going to do this. They sort people out based on their race. MSNBC had a literal panel this week of, quote, mixed race people to talk about Kamala Harris. And even they don't like Kamala. Take a listen to this woman.
You feel some kinship towards her as a mixed person?
Not personally. I find a lot of her trajectory to not be my brand of woman or leader. We've got 3 major international crises going on and someone applying to be commander-in-chief. As a woman, I want to see you do more than, appeal to giggling and having a girl moment on the stage.
Good for her. Good for her. She's not going to play by their stupid rules. You're mixed race. You're for Kamala, right? No. That's stupid. Very stupid. Coming up, the great one, Mark Levin, picks things up from here. Don't miss him here on the legendary WMAL. Have a great weekend.